Parity in college football. It's a term that has been going around, that we've been talking about, that many people have been talking about for the last many years, but more so here recently, maybe than ever. Parity in college football. The NIL, the transfer portal, all that stuff is supposed to bring more parity to the sport. Or, in other words, more equality, Teams have more of a chance to be successful. Everybody gets a more equal playing field because they can get more players. They can get these players from these big programs, and you can pay players for their name, image, and likeness. Of course, we've seen how that's gone, that it's way more than just, what we had intended it, or what it was intended to originally be. And we've seen this week that even teams, when they're at their down years, when they're on a down year, they're still who they are. And Alabama is still in Alabama. Even with the loss earlier in the year, still Alabama. Georgia's still Georgia. We don't know what Georgia's going to look like this year. We haven't really had too many chances to see them in really tough situations yet, but we will. And they'll continue to be Georgia, as well as Ohio State. They just had a close game against Notre Dame. Ohio State's still Ohio State. So this thing about parity and equality, it's still an ongoing thing. We still don't know if this transfer portal is going to be for the better of college football, if this NIL stuff is going to be for the better of college football. We don't have enough sample size to see a team filled with transfer portal players go to the national championship, go to the playoff for that matter. And that's still to be determined. And this week, some of us were humbled, no doubt. But a team like Clemson is the outlier, obviously. They are struggling right now. Dabo Swinney is, he's stubborn, maybe a little arrogant. And I don't want to put him in the same league as a Deion Sanders because they both have ego, but it's on different levels. See, you had Dabo taking over at Clemson years ago, a long time ago, when the program struggled, and he struggled, and he was on the hot seat there at Clemson, and he turned that program around and turned them into a national powerhouse. They were the ACC. Clemson was the ACC, there for a while. Obviously, Florida State had a lot of success, with Jameis Winston, for example. But they dropped off, and it was Clemson, a huge, huge, huge gap, and then teams like Florida State and North Carolina, among others. But now you see the ACC is kind of flipped around. There's a lot more equality in the ACC. There is more parity in the ACC. Because Clemson didn't get with the times in college football, like so many other programs have. And I said that we saw that this week. We've seen programs that are in down years that may be, maybe even rebuilding, but they still managed to get it done, as always. And like we'll talk about Alabama here later, our RideAlong Sports Game of the Week from last week. We'll talk about that. But among other things, we learned some stuff this week. Where there's still a lot of questions, but we learned things this week. This is the Week 4 recap right here on the RideAlong Sports Show. My name is Brandon Taylor, as always. We're going to do a quick recap. We're going to get into these SEC games for you, and we're going to talk to you about a couple games outside the SEC. You can guess which ones those are. But hey, let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it now as we take a look at the Week 4 recap. And we start out with some non-conference games inside the SEC. And let's just go over them, shall we? The number 25 ranked Florida Gators beat Charlotte 22-7. I've got a picture to show you in a moment and a story to tell you about that game. Moving on down the line, the number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs beat UAB 49-21 as they chug along, as they continue to try to work towards defending their national championship for a 3rd year in a row, something that I don't believe has ever happened before, at least not in the extreme modern times. And then you have Missouri in a great game against Memphis. I believe that game was actually took place in St. Louis, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So great game there, but Missouri gets it done 34-27. And in the final non-conference game within the SEC this week, we see Tennessee get a good win over UTSA 45-14. That is the 23rd ranked Tennessee Volunteers at the time of this game being played. Now, I said Florida, and Florida started out pretty rough this year, and they need anything that they can get. Of course, they have kind of bounced back a little bit. They've showed a little bit of progress, and I'll give it to them. I will give them that. But take a look at this right here. This right here is a guy named Ricky Pearsall. He's a wide receiver for the Florida Gators, making an incredible catch of the year, and could possibly be catch of the decade. Just incredible, like catching the ball as if he's catching a baseball in a glove. And to see it at full speed, I wish I could show it to you in full speed, but you can go on YouTube. You can find the highlights from this game. You can find this particular play. And it's just incredible. This kid he's from what I've seen, practices catching like he's just always about trying to catch the ball. His technique, he uses what they call the jugs machine, which basically throws the ball at you. It's got 2 wheels, and somebody can place a football, and you can throw the ball at different distances with that machine, different speeds, and all those kinds of things like that. But basically, this is a kid right here that he's all about practicing catching and making sure his hands are just right to be able to do things like this. Because let me tell you, that ball was thrown hard, and it's not easy to catch a football, especially like that. And some old heads may say, oh, well, they got gloves and they're really sticky. I would invite anybody to try to do that right there what that kid did. With or without a glove, as regards. I mean, if you're allowed to wear gloves, why not wear the gloves? Why are we being so nitpicky on details like that? But it's just an incredible thing by this kid. And that right there is a highlight. And like I said, that's going to be catch of the year right there. Maybe catch of the decade. We obviously still have many years to go, and I'm sure many more great catches, but that's going to be, watch it. In 2030, that's going to be at probably top 10, top 15. I hope it is at least, because that is just incredible. Odell Beckham Jr. is the comparison that people have made to this catch. Just incredible by this kid. So let's move on. And so that was your non-conference SEC versus non-conference results just quickly from this week. And, those are really, they're kind of self-explanatory. Of course, the thing with Missouri and Memphis is not a easy team. They are not a cupcake team. They're tough, and it's a trap game for a lot of SEC teams, honestly. They always, are fairly decent. But Missouri was able to get a win in that game. So let's move on to 4 other SEC head-to-head games. Now, we talked about last week that we've reached the meat and potatoes of the year, and I'm going to continue to say that phrase because I love that, meat and potatoes. But this week, as we could see, if you watched even one of these games, head-to-head games, you knew, you agree with me about the meat potatoes thing, because all football the 3 weeks prior did not compare to this week right here in these matchups. And you really see why, even in a down year and a down time for the conference, that the SEC is the greatest conference that there is in the whole universe. And let's just get right into it, shall we? This makes me so excited. I love college football so much. But here we go. As I try to hold back my fanboy sort of fandom, my college football fandom, my craziness, and you folks should see me while I'm watching some of these games. But anyway, I digress. Less about me, more about the college football. We start off Kentucky and Vanderbilt. I said that Vanderbilt was going to have a rough go when they get to SEC play, and Kentucky, Kentucky's not a bad team. They're a great team, and they're a contender in the East. I consider them as a contender in the East, along with South Carolina and obviously Georgia. However, I thought Vanderbilt's going to win a game, just like they did last year. They're going to win a game that they're not supposed to win. And you may say they're not supposed to win any SEC game. Well, this was one of the ones where they could come up behind Kentucky. They could sneak away with a win, sneak up behind this team and catch them off guard, but that didn't happen. Kentucky gets the win, 45-28. They continue on. They're 4-0 in the year, and like I said, between them, South Carolina, and Georgia, they are contenders. They're contenders. That's just how it is at this point. And it's too early to determine how all this is going to go. And not to mention the West. The West is a whole different story. Let's get into the West right here. Arkansas and LSU. Close game. Arkansas coming off a loss at home to BYU the prior week. They're 2-2 on the year. They're kind of sort of in a slump. KJ Jefferson isn't producing. The team, as a whole, isn't producing what you thought they would. KJ Jefferson being he's a great quarterback. He's big, he's strong, he's tough, physical, and a lot of people had him high ranked on their quarterback list for this season. We saw him as a top 5 quarterback, but not number 1, number 2, like a lot of people did. And they still have a lot of season to go, but they lose here to number 12 LSU 34-31. And now the question is, LSU, after that performance against Mississippi State, just how good are they? They go into Oxford to play Ole Miss this year for week 5. And what do? Can they capitalize? Is it more of a testament to them and Jaden Daniels and his statement that he made against Mississippi State? Or is it Mississippi State's just not that great of a team and they're worse than we even thought they were when LSU played them last week, back in week 3? But let's get to Mississippi State, shall we? Mississippi State and South Carolina. 37-30. South Carolina gets the win late in that game. And both teams are 2-2, and Spencer Rattler is a great football player. He's he could be the best quarterback in the league right now, and I don't know what the second one would be currently. But he is very efficient. He's a playmaker, and he's doing some incredible things. We'll talk about some stats in that game in just a moment, but let's cover this last game here. To a couple of teams that, coming in the year, really, what was our expectation of Auburn? Hugh Freeze coming in, they had an interim coach in old Cadillac last year, and Hugh Freeze comes in. And we don't know if this team is where they need to be or not. Hugh Freeze doesn't know where this team is, and you could tell by his body language at ACC Media Days and the way he talked and the way he phrased things that even he's not sure where this team is going to be. As in, what I'm trying to say is his expectations for the team. He made sure that the expectations from the fan base wasn't too great. And that way, if they end up coming out with some great wins and have a pretty successful season, that'll be overachieving and be overestimating themselves. And that's really smart, honestly. You don't want to come into a program and expect, want everybody to expect that you're going to be a great contender and, be a thorn in everybody's side, essentially, like LSU was last year with Brian Kelly. He comes in there, and in a short period of time, they just start pounding, and they win the West, and they go to the SEC championship game. And I applaud Hugh Freeze for being more conservative in that sense. And Texas A&M, I say a lot of good. I say some good. A lot of bad about Texas A&M, particularly Jimbo Fisher. Now, you all know, if you've watched any of my videos, any of these episodes, or listened to them on Spotify, you've heard me talk about Jimbo Fisher and how I believe he's very arrogant. He is, and I try to choose my words very wisely, because I don't hate the man. I just think he obviously is uncomfortable. He deflects. He throws everybody else under the bus but himself. He doesn't admit to things, even obvious things. And he's just pretty arrogant and stubborn. And his seat is getting hotter as the weeks go on. He had a good win here. They win 27-10, as you can see right there on the screen. But Jimbo is struggling, and he's in a bad way. And these are 2-3-1 teams. But where do they go from here? I said this was going to be a statement. If Hugh Freeze and Auburn can win this game, then that's a statement. But as we can see, they pulled it out. Texas A&M pulled it out. And it's just a continuum of sort of what they were before. What are they? Do we really know what Texas A&M is? I mean, is there any stars on that team? They had the greatest recruiting class of all time just a couple of years ago, or last year to be in fact. Didn't even make it to a bowl game. How do you do that? And right now, I don't know. I really literally do not know what their future holds. Like, what are they going to look like at the end of this year? They have 3 wins. Can they win 3 more and make it to a bowl game this time? It's just a mess there. And, as we look at these few games here, with LSU, for example, and for South Carolina, these are 2 teams that have great quarterbacks. And Jaden Daniels and Spencer Rattler. And I'd mentioned those 2 guys just a moment ago. 2 great quarterbacks, but they're really putting their teams on their back. But I tell you what, as we move in, as we take a little bit closer look at that Mississippi State-South Carolina game, we see it's a player, a quarterback that improved, that put the team on his back, but still came out with a loss. And that's Mississippi State. Will Rogers. Let's take a look at the stats head-to-head. I've got the basic stats here between Spencer Rattler and Will Rogers in this football game that Mississippi State lost by 7 points. As you see right here, Will Rogers, 30 of 48, 487 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He had a 54.1 quarterback rating. He was sacked 4 times in the game. On the flip side, Spencer Rattler, not as many passes, not as many throws, not as many yards, but incredible efficiency. 18 of 20, 288 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 96.7 quarterback rating, and he was sacked 4 times as well. But let me tell you, this Spencer Rattler kid, he's been in college forever. He was at Oklahoma, as you all remember. And those of you who don't, he transferred from Oklahoma. He's been at South Carolina for a couple years now. And he is improving. He is great. And he had some rushing yards as well. Maybe around 60 yards rushing in this game. But he's just athletic. He's just physical. And you see the efficiency right here. But, Spencer Rattler, it's obvious how good he is. But let's talk about Will Rogers. Let me look up the stats from Will Rogers last week and compare them to this week, because they did some different things on offense, and that's obvious. It was a shock to the system coming off the air raid system that they had been running for years, that Will Rogers is like the only thing that he knows is this air raid offense. And then obviously with the new coach, Zack, they changed things up a little bit. And they think, all right, we've got the passing thing. I mean, we're a passing team. We're obviously good at that. So let's focus and let's try to improve the run. So they worked on the run game. Well, what did that do? They took their eyes off the pass game and they struggled. They're struggling, and it's hard to believe that they're struggling passing, considering that they came off of several years as an air raid offense where they run the ball twice, maybe 2 times in a game, albeit with great running backs, but the system just didn't allow for a running back to excel unless they're willing to catch the ball out in the flat or screen pass, things like that. So as I pull up these stats for Will Rogers, you'll really see, just in looking on paper, the difference in these 2 games. But that's not the whole story. The story goes beyond that. And I'm having a really tough time getting these stats, but my biggest takeaway from this game was that Will Rogers aired the ball out. I mean, people have been begging State to air the ball out. Throw the ball down the field. You don't have to throw the ball 5, 10, 15, 20 yards. Let's see what you can do if you just try to beat them deep. And they did in this game. And there's many instances in this ball game where, hey, Will Rogers was throwing to these deep receivers and they were making plays. And it was really refreshing. Whether or not you're a State fan, it's just hard to see a quarterback like Will Rogers be exposed as he has been this year. And he is still setting records. He's on track to continue to break records. And 487 yards passing. I mean, it's incredible. It's like they took a sheet out of the playbook from last year and combined it with what else that they've been doing so far. And it's just refreshing to see. So Mississippi State versus LSU. Again, the game where Jaden Daniels proved himself. He made a statement. He put the team on his back. They dominated. They got in. That Mississippi State offensive line, as we saw it again this week, is not that great. And if you don't have time to sit in the pocket and make decisions, especially the quarterback like Will Rogers that is not that great at reading defenses and going through his different sequences when he gets back in the pocket. If he doesn't have but a second or two to make those decisions, then it's not going to be successful. Will Rogers last week versus LSU. 11 of 28, 103 yards versus this week where he was 30 for 48 and had 487 yards. In a 7-day span there, folks. The game before that, versus Arizona, he was 13 of 17 for 162 yards. And versus Southeastern Louisiana, the first game of the year, he was 20 of 29, 227 yards. They made changes. Hey, I give them all the credit in the world. They made changes. Hey, I applaud them for that. I applaud Zack Arnett and the whole team for that. And I just hope that they improve upon that, because they have if they haven't already had a rude awakening, which the LSU game and this game right here, awakenings, but maybe those are the rude awakenings, but the come to Jesus meeting comes this week, this Saturday when they have to play Alabama. Yes, it's at home. 8 o'clock Central Time, local kick, incredibly late. I can't believe they're playing a game that late on this side of the country, but hey, that's just how it is. You know, they kind of got a bad end of the deal there on that one. But we'll just have to see. For South Carolina, they continue on. Who do they have next week? Oh boy, Tennessee in Neyland Stadium, 6:30 p.m. Central Time. That's 7:30 Eastern kick, if this is indeed correct. The number 21 Tennessee Volunteers. That should be a great game. We'll see how Josh Heupel does. He went to the Swamp and got embarrassed by Florida. We'll see how they bounce back, if they can get if they can get a win here in the East. Or for South Carolina, they want to win this game, because that puts them one step forward to being a contender, to contend against Georgia, to contend against Kentucky. So that's what South Carolina's looking at. And as we continue on here, folks, you know, there was a little football game played out west as we look outside the SEC. A little team that's referred to as the Colorado Buffaloes going to Oregon to play the Oregon Ducks. Now, I don't have a graphic for this game, but no graphic needed. Because this was an old-fashioned whooping. Coach Prime goes to Colorado to be the coach. And he coaches there, and they start out hot. And they're the talk of the college football world. Not just the college football world, the pop culture world, for that matter. And they go face their first big test. And they get beat 42-6 to Oregon. And look, Oregon was favored heavily in this game. And, you know, I don't think anybody expected. I say anybody expected. I think most folks thought Oregon could take care of it. And they did. And who was behind that? Bo Nix. Bo Nix did exactly what I said last week. What was our RideAlong Sports road to victory for Oregon to win this game? Number one, Bo Nix. That's all I said. Bo Nix. you have to just let him make plays, and oh, he did. He sure did. There was no lack of effort from Bo Nix in this game. I mean, just a whopping 28 of 33, 276 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did throw an interception. He also had a rushing touchdown. But they looked very good. There's no doubt about that. Oregon looked great in this football game. And they were kind of, at least in my opinion, I didn't think much of Oregon coming into the year. They're kind of catching me off guard, honestly. But they're real contenders. At least they appear to be. And they have some tests up, coming up for them. But on the flip side, on the other sideline, Shedeur Sanders was 23 of 33, 159 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He was exposed this year, this game. He was exposed. The whole team was exposed, and obviously Travis Hunter was injured in the previous game versus Colorado State, so he didn't get to play in this game. And the funny thing about that is I've heard people, some of these talking heads say, well, Travis Hunter plays in this game. It's a whole different ball game. They had a chance they could have won this game. They may even win if he's on the football field. Well, let me tell you something, folks. I don't care who you are. No one person is going to cover a 36-point deficit. No one player is going to allow you to score 36 more points. At least 36 more points. Maybe they do a little bit better, but Oregon was it was their game. They exposed Colorado's defense. Picked them apart. And they absolutely did not allow Colorado to get any kind of rhythm on offense. They were on them. The battle in the trenches was great. And they just did what they had to do. Look, they took care of Shedeur Sanders. They did not allow him to make plays. Check. All right. Let Bo Nix step back in the pocket or run, do whatever he has got to do. Just let the kid play football. Let the kid make plays. Check. Hey, that's really all you need to do. Colorado couldn't stop him. And that's that. The next game on the list, the other non-conference, or should I say outside the SEC game for our list, is Ohio State at Notre Dame. The line on this game was -3, Ohio State. And I picked Ohio State. And, I expected it to not be what it was, honestly. Ohio State wins 17-14. Literally, as time expires, they get the game-winning touchdown as the clock's running out in the fourth quarter. And they covered the spread. But I expected them to win by more than that. I did. Let's just take a look quickly at the quarterback battle for that game. Kyle McCord, 21 of 37, 240 yards, not a single touchdown, no interceptions. All right. On the flip side, for Sam Hartman for Notre Dame, he was 17 of 25, 175 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks in this game. Not a whole lot offensively in this ball game, obviously. It was a great defensive battle. Well, the thing about Ohio State and Kyle McCord is he's obviously a different quarterback. He's not what we're used to seeing at Ohio State. This offense is not used to what we're seeing at Ohio State. Are they still Ohio State? Like I said earlier about the parity thing, yeah, they're still Ohio State. And they still have a chance to make it to the playoffs. A lot of people think they're going to make it to the playoffs, regardless who's under center or behind the center. Excuse me. Nobody goes under center anymore in college football. That's a lost art. What are they, the NFL? And Notre Dame, where do they go from here? Ohio State was number 6 in this game. Notre Dame was number 9. That's what I really say. Meat and potatoes, folks. Meat and potatoes. Hey, this is a top 10 matchup right here in week 4. We love it. We love it. We absolutely love it. But with that being said, we went through the SEC slate. We've went through the SEC versus SEC, the SEC versus non-conference games. We went through a couple out-of-conference games. Now, if you've been paying attention, we left one off. Yes, folks, you are correct. If you guessed that, you win. It's time to cover the RideAlong Sports Game of the Week. The game of the week for this week, Alabama and Ole Miss. Alabama, of course, gets the victory 24-10. And it was not what a lot of people expected, but it was, is the usual thing for others. And for Bama, just another day at the office, if we're going to be honest here. A lot of people, including myself, thought Ole Miss had a good chance of doing something great in this game. I thought they had a chance to what am I trying to say here? To pick at a seemingly vulnerable, digressing, depreciating Alabama football team. And they couldn't take advantage of it. Lane Kiffin got out-coached. We talked about before how Nick Saban has been getting out-coached for more now and more last season and this season, more than we ever remember him getting out-coached ever before, ever. Well, he sure didn't get out-coached in this ball game. And Ole Miss, the Rebels came to town, and they didn't have a chance. We wondered how Jackson Dart would do for Ole Miss. We wondered if their running game can if they can get that going. If they can get the running game going, they can get Quinshon Judkins, Ulysses Bentley, or Jackson Dart, any of the three really going. And let's be honest, you want Quinshon Judkins with the ball in his hand. But they couldn't do anything. And I don't know, it's the line. That offensive line is turning out to be not that great. And that's really affecting him. And I'd be doing a disservice to the team if I didn't give Pete Golding some sort of recognition here, because the defense has played relatively well this year. They wasn't bad in this game. They got to Jade Milroe. They did pressure him. In that first half, they were doing exactly what I said they needed to do last week. I said what they needed to do. They got to get pressure on Jalen Milroe. They got to force him to make bad decisions. And he made one bad decision on an interception. But they can't let him get out. They can't let him make plays with his feet. You can't let him throw the deep ball. That was Alabama's road to victory. Number one, they can get the running game established and then beat Ole Miss with the long ball. They did that. They beat him deep. Ole Miss was vulnerable deep. and Alabama won the lines of scrimmage. That was the other thing. But the Ole Miss defense did pretty good in this game. I'm not gonna lie about that. As an Ole Miss fan or as a neutral fan out there or whatever you may be, it's frustrating to see a defense play so well and an offense not be able to back that up. Defense puts you in a good situation, and you turn around and you're running back on the field because the offense can't do anything. Well, that was this Saturday. Jalen Milroe, hey, he's the guy. And he wanted to prove himself this week. And hey, he wasn't perfect by any means, but he made some plays, and really, this is a testament not necessarily to any one particular player as much as it is Nick Saban and his coaching staff. They did not allow themselves to be complacent. They went into halftime. The game was close there. They went into halftime, only winning by 3 points. It was 10-7 at halftime. They went to the locker room. They made some changes. They just do what Nick Saban's supposed to do. He's supposed to adjust. He's supposed to be able to, all right, we know what everything that they're, quite frankly, probably after that first quarter, they knew everything that Ole Miss was going to do. They knew everything Ole Miss was doing. And at halftime, they figured out how they were going to defend that, what they were going to do. Because look right there. Hey, Ole Miss scores 7 points in the first quarter. They score 3 in the third quarter. None in the second, none in the fourth. Meanwhile, Alabama scores 18 in the second half after scoring 6 going into halftime. Yes, I messed that up. It was 7-6 Ole Miss at halftime. I screwed that up. Sorry. Hey, Nick Saban, look, we've been talking about how he's losing a step, how he's not the Nick Saban, or not seemingly the same Nick Saban that he's been for so long, but hey, he's still incredibly tough to beat. And, you're Ole Miss, and it's frustrating because you thought you had a chance. The fan base, you thought you had a chance here to win this game, and it just didn't. It didn't come to pass. It didn't come to happen. It didn't happen. You couldn't do it. You failed. Lane Kiffin got out coached again, and a lot of people are coming down on Lane Kiffin. Yeah, he talks trash. He's got the social media thing going on. But, and there's also the thing that piles. Look, he wins this game, he's a genius. He loses this game, he's a piece of trash. He needs to get off the social media. He needs to get out from behind the podium and go coach the team, go practice, go do all that crap. Look, this is the same kind of talk that we hear from Alabama fans when Alabama loses a football game about Nick Saban, the greatest football coach of all time, and nobody will ever get within 200, 3, 5, 10,000 miles of him. Hey, but you never know. Maybe one of these days there'll be another GOAT like Nick Saban, but I don't see it happening. Ole Miss plays LSU in Oxford this Saturday. It's a real test for them. What are they going to do? Are they going to let that performance where they had that chance and it was Not as close as last year, where they, literally were 15 yards away from winning the football game there at the end. No, you wasn't that close. But you're going to let that define your season. Go in there at home, get a good win over LSU, and then look ahead towards Arkansas. You got to play Georgia this year. But hey, one team at a time, one game at a time, 1 week at a time. For Alabama, they go play Mississippi State in Starkville. They're probably not going to leave Tuscaloosa till 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock that afternoon, literally on Saturday. And Mississippi State can just hope that they are able to put up a good performance. You never know, they could shock the world, but I don't anticipate that. But hey, that was college football for this week. It was another great week. We had some incredible matchups, and we loved every single second of it. And it goes without saying that so many more surprises are up ahead. And do we really know how good our teams are? I said this last week, and I'll say it again this week. Do we really know how great our teams are? This is still to be determined. That's what's so great about this sport. It's what's so great about sports, as a whole. Who's going to be in that playoff here in a few months? Who's going to be in that championship? Look, that's months away. We're worried about right now. And right now, we just looked at week 4. We're going to look ahead to week 5 as we get into really close to the middle of the season. We're over a quarter of the way. We're over a third of the way through. And, oh boy, we got a lot of stuff up ahead. A lot of content up ahead right here on RideAlong Sports. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us on X. We're here on YouTube. We're on TikTok. That's where you can find your exclusive content right here from RideAlong Sports between myself and Zack Ainsworth, our good buddy, the new father. But for Zack Ainsworth, my name is Brandon Taylor. I want to thank you again for joining us on this edition of the RideAlong Sports Show. We'll see you next time. God bless.